Hey everyone, welcome to Subspace App Syncs. This is week October 11th of 2022. Let's get started. In our done column, we have 5 issues done this week. Congrats everyone on working, getting those done. First one, Trail of Bits audit issue number 1. That was the group write permissions. And this is Özgen, you want to talk a little bit about this change and how this helps with audit?
Sure. By the way, most of the credit goes to Natasha. She is not here. So basically, we had group permissions for Linux, especially for the config file. Now, only the user itself or herself can have read or write to the file. For macOS, it was safe. For Windows, it was again safe. So this is mostly for Linux. We got that covered.
Okay, awesome, perfect, great job. I think that closes out our first the first audit issue completely. Then we're done with that.
True.
Okay. This was related to the first issue. This is from Natasha.
I guess.
Pete.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, this
For
is.
these
Okay.
permissions to be invoked, yeah, it has to be invoked from the backend.
Restrict OSA script for front end.
Yeah, let me elaborate on that. OSS script is Apple scripts, which is only used for the auto launcher for the macOS. But to enable that, we actually have given full access to the front end for shell, which means front end could execute any shell command if, in case of any XSS attack across the group side. Now we put a very strict regular expression so that only monitoring the auto launch items related to auto launch items are executed. Other commands are neglected, and yeah, so it's fixed.
Does this awesome? Does this close out number 5 completely, or we're still missing? Oh, we're still missing the file system.
No, this other one is in progress. We can talk about it later. This is only fixing the shell. Other one is file system.
Okay, perfect. Add initial API for SDK. That's Ivan.
Yeah, sure. We discussed it last week, I believe. Apart from that, we messaged with Özgen about the actual API. Like you can see here, like the API changed a bit in terms of like having the required arguments in the as arguments for the build. So, for example, here the simplest example right now actually requires setting the required arguments during the call, the build call. Yeah, previously, like we weren't required to do that actually. Yeah, and that could lead to some incomplete configurations for the farmer, for example. So we should have been throw the error if, like, for example, like reward address wasn't set. So yeah.
Cool, awesome, great work. So I think now that we have the initial SDK, if we could add a simple README to this project, then we could start making this repository public. Now that we have kind of like the initial API out and ready to go.
Actually, I had a question about that. Why did we start it out as private to begin with?
Yeah, we started out with private because there was nothing in the repository yet. So just to get the repo set up, just kind of left it private until it's more fleshed out.
Okay.
I actually don't know. I created a repository the same way as Özgen did. So I just looked at the Subspace CLI and it was private.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my reasoning for it. Is just because there's just no substance in the repository yet. So I was waiting to have more of it like built out before opening it up.
Okay, that makes sense. But going forward, I'd like to just by default make everything public and stay that way going forward, just to stay closer to our open source roots.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. So then what we'll do after this call, then I will open up the SDK and also the CLI, and then we'll just start cleaning up from there. Okay. Excellent. This was a draft, but I know the PR for it isn't open, so we'll jump over there. But now that we have Ivan, your fix out, we have our list and map views back online for telemetry. So great work. Let's jump over. Well, first off, let me do this. Everyone knows that I've archived all the cards again. Boom. Cool. In progress. Limit updates on number of nodes. I think this is related to your larger PR, right?
Yeah. You could probably open the PR itself. Yeah, I couldn't see it on the board actually.
Here, there. I had it open
Oh
already.
yeah, yeah. But basically, this PR just fully like reworks the state updates for the telemetry itself, so that we could like batch all of the updates and bundle and just skip like this same type of updates. So for example, we could send only like the last final block which was sent to the telemetry. So yeah, that allowed us to skip like lots of updates in the end. So yeah, that's how this power works. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I know we had this deployed, which is great. So that's awesome. What do we need to do to kind of get it past the code review so we can merge this back in? I think based on the last updates, is like you need to chunk it better or something so we can push it back upstream, or
actually, yeah, for this exact PR, I'm just waiting for Binazar's review here. I'll just ping him after the meeting. Yeah, but yeah, I would also spend some time like maybe submitting the patch to the party. Yeah, I think that will be helpful for them. Yeah, but right now, like it requires to spend some time like to cherry pick like all the commits because we diverge like our branches a bit from the parity. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
I have a comment or question about telemetry. Yvonne, would you be able to reach out to the two, I don't know if they're the maintainers, but at least the two lead contributors for telemetry? There's two engineers there that have done like 80 or 90% of the work. And just reach out to them like on GitHub or somewhere and ask them if they would be willing to do any consulting work with us or do an audit of what we're doing, give us feedback on the architecture of telemetry and how we could extend it. And if they're interested in that, you know, we can work out a deal with them. But I would really like to get kind of their feedback on this and see if there's any way that we can kind of get an outside opinion on how we can tackle these problems, because I think we've kind of exhausted our internal ability to kind of scale this or resolve this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will reach out to them.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Going back to Ozgen and Surge, issue number 5 in progress. Just the file system.
This is the continuation of the previous issue. Like the shell is fixed. Now it's file system. By file system, I mean read, write, and create and remove operations regarding the file system. So front end previously had too much power. Like it could read any file, it could write any file, it could remove any file. Like the application was working, but of course it was not secure in that sense. Now we are scoping down everything. Like first step, we carried all the functions to the backend. And as the second step, we narrowed down the scope. So for example, right now, there isn't any function called write to file. It's like write config. So it only writes to configuration file, for example. Other examples are similar, like narrowing down the scope. We had today a last discussion with Serge about removal part. I believe backend is good to go, and I believe front end is also good to go, but maybe Serge wants to add something to what I said.
Yeah, I just need to check last changes a few more times just to make sure. But yeah, I think we're pretty close.
Okay, good to hear.
Couple of more things about that, like so many things have changed, and especially related to auto launch and configuration. So I believe it would be good to test all these functionalities, macOS, Windows, and Linux. After that, we can conclude that, okay, this is done. So that should be another step for closing this issue.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right. Anything else? Cool.
Congratulations to us, because this was the biggest issue.
Yeah, I know. It's it gets you to get this done pretty quickly. I'm actually quite impressed and surprised. That's great to hear. So I'm looking forward to us coordinating with TrailBits to kind of set up the final resolution. Speaking of which, update dependencies number 6. I think we're still waiting upstream, right? Or what's the outcome for this?
Yeah, like I believe we are tracking this very good. Only 3 of the things are unticked. SP version, I believe this was a false positive. I contacted with Trail of Bits, so they are checking on that. So aside from that, only 2 dependencies are remaining, and I put the links for the open and closed issues there. So we are in track.
Okay, excellent. All right, cool. We're gonna probably be much sooner. That's great to hear.
On that, were we looking at the ability to try to contribute to fix those ourselves, or were we waiting on them to do it? And if they don't do it, we're just gonna let
For
TrailBits know.
XML iOS, there is work to be done, which is abundant. I was waiting for other bugs, like I was waiting for fixing other bugs. So now that I have more time, I can start on doing that. But for unzTerm, like this is not even an issue. It's just unmaintained. So there is no security concern with unzTerm. So if we conclude that, like we know and we acknowledge that this is unmaintained, and we want to keep it as is because it's also used by Substrate, maybe we can deal with it, because like I said, this is not a security issue.
Okay, I think that's fine. I think we can present back to TrailBits, and then we can work with them on that. Okay, awesome. Great. Fixed contributor workflow. I just opened a simple PR for this, but essentially, when I was working on a Subspace desktop, Subspace docs a couple of weeks ago, there's this contributor list that was kind of broken and kind of made a bunch of progress. So I'm going to sync it with Justin on it. This is just a simple fix to remove the flow and then leverage our internal insights. So that's pretty much it. FS backend. This is a draft.
Yeah, as we discussed, we were just trying to find.
This is number 5.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. On the inbox side, we still have to export node list data and add space pledge component. We talked about that last week, so we don't have to talk about it again. Let's go into the new one for triage, which I want to bring up. Add high scene node count to telemetry. So yeah, Serge and I, as we were discussing earlier, essentially we need the ability to show the highest node count, like that's been touched by telemetry at a given point in time. Currently, using the live node count on telemetry is great for engineering purposes, but for marketing, them being able to see what the highest node count is much more effective information for them to use, especially with the milestones. Any thoughts?
So the problem here is we cannot know what was the highest block before, the highest count before. We can only like store cache moving forward. So if we have like 30 cells, yeah, it won't show 30.
Yeah, we just need to be able to start tracking it going forward.
Yeah, I think as long as we're able to start caching the highest seen node count, eventually we don't have to worry about the historical node counts. We'll eventually just having that will just be a great way to track forward.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize the importance of this. We need, like, the soonest we can have this out, like if we can have this out tomorrow, that would be ideal, as we are rapidly approaching milestone 2 with the space pledged. And so the last component of that is going to be showing that we have 40,000 nodes, and we've had up to 29,000 before, but right now it's showing 20,000. We don't have really any way to do that. So this is basically blocking the entire community of getting to milestone 2 until we can have this feature deployed. So it's very, very important.
So I think you can assign to both of us, to Ivan and me, and I mean, from the front end perspective, it's trivial. Like if backend is ready tomorrow, we can do it.
Sure, yeah, it's also trivial from a backend perspective. Yeah, we just need to add like one more event, I believe. Yeah, and that should do.
Okay, perfect. How are we going to deal with the code changes with your outstanding PR for send all changes? Are you just going to build on top of that branch and then just merge to? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, excellent, great to hear. We have, as always, we'll get back to this. Audit's completed, so we'll be revisiting these shortly. But I think that's pretty much sums up the board for this week. Is there any other additional discussions or questions that you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, something that is not on the board, as I mentioned on Monday yesterday, I was exploring the possibility of using Subsquid for our purposes, and yeah, so far it looks interesting. So basically, there are two components. One is archive that is basically storage of raw data of any substrate chain, and it exposes GraphQL API. And another component is a little bit more interesting. It's Squid, where all the magic happens. It consumes the data from the archive, and you can set processors for different like blocks, events, particular extrinsics, etc. And it also stores it in the local database and exposes GraphQL API, so the client applications can consume it. And so most archives are public, but Subspace is not there yet. They have like 33 archives that are parachains. So I tried to run our like Subspace archive locally, and I keep running out of space for some reason. So I will investigate a little bit on that. But yeah, so far it looks okay. We can definitely use it.
Okay, awesome. That's great to hear. After this call, I will be opening up all the other repositories, SDK, CLI, and I will be opening up one for the Block Explorer. So going forward, we're going to start doing some Q4 planning, which will include the Block Explorer as well. So I will have the tickets and milestones ready for all of those additionally to what we have right now. Also, I probably want to have a conversation when Natasha gets back so all of us can go over it really quickly and then start, pushing forward on those initiatives. But I will include the Block Explorer subsequent work that you're working on.
Yeah, and that's exciting. Thanks for doing that research, Serge. I had a couple questions and comments on that. So if I understand what you're saying, like vanilla Subsquid or the basic framework just archives the chain. So I guess like blocks and transactions and events. And then the Squid part of it is this like custom, I guess, data transformation logic that you can add in. But both of those get exposed over GraphQL in the same way. It's just that sort of how complex do you or how rich do you want your indexes to be?
Yeah, that's correct understanding.
Okay, awesome.
I think GraphQL is the default one. I believe it can be customized as well.
Okay. I imagine we probably just want to stick with the default GraphQL unless we have a special reason we wanted to expose it over some other like HTTPS or something like that, or a regular REST API. Okay, so from what I understand, Subsquid has I guess two ways that you can use it. One is where it's kind of like a managed service, like with what we're doing with Subscan, or what the other subquery does. There's so many subs in this industry, it's ridiculous. Where we pay and they manage it for us, and I think that's what you're talking about when you say they do 33 chains. But since it's an open source framework, we can also sort of like self-host it and do it ourselves, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what I'd like to explore is actually both of those in parallel. So I'd like for us to have the ability for the core chain, like let's say for the primary chain or the farmer chain, like what we consider the blockchain right now, for that to be something which they host, since that's something that we need. That's like the foundation of everything that we do. But we would also want to build our own, like just to kind of host the basic data, I guess, or the basic archive, sort of as like a I don't know what you want to call it, like just to make it more resilient, more distributed, and but we need to also have our own that we use, like have our own version of it that's fully open source. And this framework right now is very important because, like managing this on our own, I guess, is going to be very important because, like right now, in Gemini 2, we just have the farmer chain. Like we just have like one like mono blockchain, like everybody else does, right? One monolithic chain. We're getting like weeks away from having two, possibly four different chains, like the primary chain, the secondary chain, which we call the system domain, and then two core domains. And within maybe 3 months, we might have like a dozen core domains, and within a year, we might have like 1,000 domains. And each one of these is effectively a substrate-based chain, which will need to be archived and which will need a block explorer. So we kind of have to like extend this or like compose this within a larger framework of like, when you start up a domain, you get a block explorer like out of the box for free, somewhat like Polkadot.js already does, but this all needs to kind of integrate into one larger system. So my point here is that we're going to have to always have our own framework in-house that we're maintaining and continuously extending for this sort of richer ecosystem. But at the same time, we should certainly support, Subsquid and pay a little bit of money, so that they can stay in business and keep doing great open source work, and get them to host, our core data as well.
Yeah, I believe at this stage we can only do self-hosted because it requires for them to create a public archive for Subspace first before we can host any squids, Subspace related squids on their cloud.
Okay, then if that's the case, then if we could start like the business development process, or Arthur, if you could reach out to them and start that that process of setting something up with them.
Yeah, sounds good.
So maybe in the meantime, we can create our own archive on any of our like droplets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. Is there anything else that you just want to talk about?
No, I just wanted to say great job, everybody, on the audit. I'm really glad to see that we're resolving these issues so fast, and look forward to doing a write-up on this and sharing this, publishing it with the community, doing a blog post on the lessons learned here as soon as we get approval, as soon as we pass the audit from Trailbit's point of view.
Awesome. Yeah, great work, everyone. All right, cool. If there's something else, then I'm going to conclude the call, and we will see everyone next week.